Hello.
Hey, looking for.
Okay, great. I can hear Neal. Can you hear me?
This looks like a nice turnout.
How's everyone doing there?
I'm doing well, Neal. How are you?
I am good.
Good. Good to have you here. Before we start, everyone, Neal and I are going to be having a chat. People are welcome to ask questions. So if everyone just goes over to the voice command at the bottom of the screen and turns on your channel that says Wahoo All Access, and then over on the right, over on mic mode, if everyone just goes to push to talk for the moment, because that'll keep the line clear for Neal and I to chat, and then people can chime in later on in the ride. But that'll avoid any background noise from anyone playing music or having a side conversation. So if everyone can just be on push to talk and then turn the Wahoo All Access channel on.
Also, throughout the ride, if you just want to type a question into the chat, you can feel free to do that. We also have Rupert here. We'll also be monitoring the chat there as well and pass along if we don't happen to see your message. So you've got that down just at the left end of the voice in the bottom part as well. Looks like we got a good crew here.
Yeah, is this your first ride of the day, Neal, or were you already at it up and at it earlier this morning?
Today, this is my first ride, and this will be my biggest ride of the year. Most number of people that I've ridden with. How about you?
I would say so. I've actually been doing quite a few of the races here on RGT, and a couple of them actually. I did one race that had maybe 50 or 60 riders.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice warm up. I'm actually heading down to Mississippi this week.
Ooh, that'll be a little bit warmer than where you've been
the first
lately.
Gravel event. I don't know how many people are going to be there, but yeah, well, we haven't been getting the snow like you've been getting out in Colorado. So, it hasn't been terribly cold here. We have no snow on the ground.
Yeah, I've been not riding outdoors as much. I've been mostly riding indoors, but getting outside for some skiing, some AT skiing. Should probably take my fat bike out, but just a little bit easier some days just to hop on the kicker bike and be good to go.
Yeah, well, I actually did get out for a road ride this past weekend, which was, I think we've lived up in Vermont for 5 years now. This is the first time I've ever done a road ride anywhere between, say, late November and February. So tells you the winter we're having that.
Wow.
Yeah, not much snow on the ground.
Yeah, definitely. That's we do get to ride throughout the winter different times, but we've had a little bit of a cold and snowy block here.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon. This is Sir John from mid-Michigan. And we have no snow.
Hello, Sir John. Oh boy.
I was riding single track on my skinny, New Year's Day. So yeah, that is very unusual.
Well, hopefully some of this moisture will come your way.
I'm kind of liking it right now. I got the fat bike and can do the fat bike. But
just a couple seconds till go time, everybody.
Yeah, well, I guess, Neal, given that it is winter time and a lot of people are getting ready for New Year's resolutions.
Thank you very much. Cheers, okay, bye now.
I guess as we get started, if anyone can hear us, if you could just turn your mic to push to talk, that would help the audio for Neal. But Neal, as I was saying, as we kind of get started on
I think I might have lost you there, Ian.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying as we kind of get started in New Year's resolutions and winter training, I wanted to pick your brain a bit about how people can kind of best get prepared for the coming year. I mean, a lot of people this time of year are getting back on the bike for the first time. they're, in a couple months, they've started to set goals, pick the events they want to go to. There's kind of a lot of information out there around, base training, winter training. Where's the best spot for people to start when they, kind of getting back into the rhythm of training for the new year?
Yeah, there's a few things. I'd say first and foremost thing is making sure that you have a plan to be consistent with the training that you do, whether that's 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. We don't really recommend like full-on training 7 days a week. That's just too much, unless a couple of days a week, recovery spins, walks, hikes, something like that to switch it up. But having a plan to be consistent is pretty much one of the first things that's important, and it has to be sustainable. So a lot of times you start a year with a lot of motivation, grand designs, but it has to be reasonable and sustainable for it to have that best progression over time. So it is better to be a little more reasonable initially as you train, to establish that habit and changes that you're making in that way that, let's say you are committing to ride 2 days a week and have 2 quality days, set those aside and have them be priority. If you can get any additional just endurance sessions beyond that, great. That's kind of like I'd say one of the high level early ways to think about how you approach the new year.
Well, and that's one thing that's actually drastically changed in my life over the last number of years since I left World Tour racing. Was when I was in the World Tour doing, 25, 30-hour training weeks. If I didn't sometimes feel motivated or like it was beneficial to do an hour ride or a 30-minute ride, it just seemed so short that it didn't really play into the big kind of scheme of things. But, now being, a father and working, it's something that I tried to implement in my training. It's like, doing something most days, even if that's, a walk or a run or a 30-minute ride inside. That consistency, does play such a big part in kind of getting prepared for the coming season.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's honestly, in the athletes that I've worked with over time at any level, whether you're an amateur, whether you're a master's rider, whether you're a pro, it's the consistency of what you do that is probably the most important thing. Big days definitely can be helpful, but if you do like one monster day on the weekend and then you take 5 days off and then the next weekend you do another monster day, you're actually not going to get as fit as if you did 3 days more moderate every week. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I guess I wanted to ask you as well about winter training is, in the past, when I first grew up, there's kind of this old school mentality of, the winter training is just easy. I remember speaking to Italians, you need to do, 5,000 kilometers in your small chain ring before you start training hard. Which, it's changed a lot, and especially, people who are, either doing some virtual racing on RGT or they're doing workouts in system. A lot of it's pretty intense training. You're going to get a lot more bang for your buck doing something structured if you have an hour than just doing an endurance ride. Where has kind of the mindset on that changed?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely been a shift over time. And so again, old school classic training advice was, in the winter months, you just do low intensity, you don't do anything hard. You do that for several months, and then you're ready to really ramp it up. We've seen over time that while you can do that and have success, there are many other pathways to success. And most of us that say, live somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, the winter months are not really conducive to going out and doing long, easy endurance rides. The weather conditions, et cetera, are not ideal, the daylight hours, all those kind of things. And so there's definitely been a shift where we see, okay, if we're going to be training less in the winter months, like most of us, that actually adding intensity and specificity to what we do there can actually lead us to better performance throughout the summer as we start to then be able to ride a little bit longer. So good examples of this being applied even at the highest level would be, say, track cycling. It's been a winter sport for the past, 15, 18, almost 20 years now. And some of the, let's just say, pro tour athletes like Mariana Voss, Lizzie Dagnan, Bradley Wiggins, Mark Cavendish, Geraint Thomas, Rowan Dennis, I can go down the list, Taylor Finney, of athletes who raced on the track in the winter months, high intensity, and then come to the road and have success. Definitely has a place. And we also see that with a couple of the other really good riders these days in the road for the men's peloton, like Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel and Tom Pidcock, racing cyclocross, really high intensity, November, December, January. And then they go to the road and also have great success straight away. And so this old idea of just going low intensity all winter is kind of like passe. You can do it if you live in a place where that works for you and it makes you happy, great. For the vast majority of folks, it's really not reasonable to do that kind of training.
Yeah. Well, I guess, one thing before we kind of get back into training, for those of you who are new to RGT platform, this ride is rubber banded, meaning that regardless how hard you go, we are all going to stay in a group. So as long as you're pedaling, you'll stay in the group, and you can be riding at your absolute max and you'll still stay in the group. So I actually just got an interesting call from this event that I'm going to in Mississippi about a shakeout ride that I'm leading, worried about it being too hard because I'm showing up. And I wish we could sometimes bring the rubber band effect to the real world, but unfortunately, not so practical.
If we put everyone on a restricted gear, maybe that could.
Yeah, exactly. But back to training. One thing that I guess I, think about and try to grasp is, a lot of the big events that I have planned for the coming year do require a lot of endurance. If you look at Unbound or SBT, these are 7 to 10 hour events, or
for regular people 8 to 12, 14 hours.
Yeah. They're long. One of the things I've done in the past while training indoors, is maybe I would do a workout in the morning and then a workout in the evening. I'm not getting that consistent, 5 or 6 hour ride or, 3 or 4 hour ride. But by doing 2 intense workouts, both in the morning and both again in the evening, are you getting some of that endurance effect, even if they're broken up by, several hours during the middle of the day?
For sure. And that's one of the things that we do a lot of times, if it is indoor training, doing 2 sessions, splitting up one in the morning, one in the afternoon, or doing a mix of, some intense quality riding on the trainer, and then going outside and doing some sort of cross training, whether it's a hike, a cross country ski, some other outdoor activity to add in just some of the lower intensity volume to get those longer days just a little bit more than you would if you only stayed inside. Because I would say I'm not a big fan of encouraging rides greater than 3 hours on a trainer.
Yeah.
I've done it, yes. Every now and then, for those nights here in the audience, we know that knighthood day is epic. And so, that's a big day, but it's not something you need to do consistently, even if you're getting ready for those long races.
Yeah. And so if you are doing double days inside, for example, is there a preference of when you should do an intense workout? Let's say you're going to do one kind of, steady state workout and you're going to do one high intensity workout. Better to do the in the morning or in the evening?
Yeah, my recommendation is to hit that harder workout first. Get the quality in. That way you've done the harder work of the day, and the second session is just then about that sustaining the endurance. And honestly, in a race situation, a lot of times the beginning in those kind of races is harder anyhow, and then it settles out, steadies out. Also, it's just because you're fatigued and you maybe not able to do as much work later on, but that's a good way to approach it for most folks.
Yeah. Huh. And what about when it comes to cross train? We actually had a chat with you yesterday about some of the running I've been doing, and kind of the different stress that puts on the body. Especially if you're doing a sport that's not something you're regularly doing. You're cross country skiing or you're ice skating or whatever it may be. Is that stress based off time similar to something you'd be expecting on the bike? For example, if you do an hour-long skate ski compared to an hour-long ride, how do you kind of quantify the fatigue factor of those two different workouts?
Yeah, there's a few things you can do. Looking at heart rate can give you some insight, though keep in mind your heart rate response is specific to the sport you're doing. So in many cases, say, cycling, your heart rate for a given effort is lower than when you run at the same effort, or if you cross-country ski at the same effort. So knowing that your heart rates are higher when doing like weight-bearing exercise, so whether it's running or skiing or skating, that you have to make a little bit of adjustment on your heart rate targets upwards in that respect. If you swim, where it's more your upper body predominantly at work, and you're kind of horizontal in the water, your heart rate will tend to be lower for the same effort. So keep that in mind when you're trying to judge that. Big picture, perceived effort, easy is easy, hard is hard. Whether you have any kind of a quantified output with heart rate or power or any of those things, you still always have your perceived effort. So endurance sessions should always be in that kind of, we'll say, relatively easy to moderate. Like on a 1 to 10 scale, a 2, 3, or 4 is like endurance training.
Well, I know you've coached plenty of Olympic athletes and world champions over the course of your career as a coach. How important is, even if someone has a coach or they don't, how important is it for them to be keeping track of, not just the work that they've done, whether it's time or hours or distance, but also keeping notes? I mean, as a coach, how much do you look at notes that athletes write down? I felt great, or I didn't feel good, because oftentimes, you look back on something and you realize, oh, I've been feeling tired for a week now, and I'm still trying to push on with my training.
Yeah, so from a high level, when we think about training, it's the work you do, is kind of like the black and white structure. That's just what you did. And if you have stuff like heart rate and power, measured speed and cadence, that can tell me as a coach, black and white, what you did. The comments and your subjective, how you felt while doing a given workout, what happened, anything you noticed that's kind of different. That's where the real color and the real added dimension of understanding your training comes in. So I always recommend, if you're using some sort of online training log, that you don't just upload the file, but add a little bit of commentary, generally how you felt while doing those efforts, any other special notes. In that way, really always provides the context that is quite useful.
Yeah.
So Ian, before we go forward, I know we're about 15 minutes in here. We have a couple folks that might not even know who you and I are really. So Ian, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself, what your background is, and then I'll do the same, just so everyone out there has some idea of who you're here and talking.
Yeah, well, I am Ian Boswell. I'm one of the leaders of this ride with Neal Henderson. I was a world tour rider for 7 years. Then I transitioned to gravel racing in 2020. At the same time, I started working at Wahoo. And I've been racing gravel for the last couple years. And still relatively young, but love riding my bike. I've done a handful of decent results, and more than anything, just at this point in my life and career, still like going fast, but enjoy sharing the knowledge that I've kind of acquired and learned through my own mistakes or through people who have helped me during my career, with all of you. So likewise, if people have any questions, feel free to send them my way. And Neal Henderson as well, always a wealth of knowledge. I'll let you introduce yourself, Neal.
Yeah, so Ian forgot to mention he did win Unbound a couple years ago, one of those big victories and the biggest gravel race out there. So Ian definitely has some top quality experiences, and I'm always learning from him as well. my background, I started doing endurance sports when I was in high school, which was a very long time ago. We'll just say over 30 years ago. Did my first triathlon. I continued to do triathlon predominantly through college and ended up racing several years as an elite in triathlon, though I was working full time throughout my entire career. Kind of, I knew where my limits were. I was never going to be winning Kona or any of those things, but I've enjoyed competing across a diverse range of different types of events, and I compete in a lot of cycling events as well, both track and cyclocross, road, gravel. I definitely like to apply what I've learned as a physiologist and as a coach and try to help others perform well. So I've been coaching for quite some time. I volunteered with our first national teams for triathlon in 1996. I've been part of our Olympic team staff for the US in 2012 and 2016, and then with the Australian team in 2020 in Tokyo. And so I've had the good pleasure to work with a lot of world-class professionals, world champions, but also a lot of amateurs, masters, juniors, U23, all across the range. I just like to help people achieve their goals.
Yeah, well, I don't even know the answer to this question. How many world championship medals and Olympic medals have you coached?
Oh man, world titles, I think we're currently over 50. That's just titles, not even medals. So if we add world championship medals and titles, it's quite a few. And again, across the range. So junior, road and track, U23, road, let's see, elite road, elite track, masters, mountain bike, masters triathlon from sprint, Olympic, 70.3, Ironman, ITU long distance. Quite a bit of that kind of stuff. Myself, actually, I've had 2 medals at world championships at Xterra in my age group way back when I was a young buck. Finished second in 1998 in my age group, and just a few years ago in 2017, I finished third in my age group at the Aquabike World Championships, which is basically triathlon without the run, so the swim and the bike. And I'm getting ready this year for Masters Triathlon Worlds and Super Sprint Triathlon and Aquabike in end of September in Spain.
Wow. Yeah, I guess I'm curious, as a sports physiologist and a coach, obviously training has, keeps evolving and changing, and, there's always new science and research. What's been the biggest change you've seen over the last, 15 years of your career?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing I've seen as a change, there's a couple, but one of the big things is actually people understanding the value of strength training for athletes. It used to just be like an off season only, or the winter months, fall or winter, that people would do strength training, and then you stop it as soon as you start dialing up your endurance. And many, many years ago with athletes, I was realizing that even for my young professionals, having them do strength training year round provided benefits for them, not just in performance, but being able to stay healthy. Structurally strong and stable means they can tolerate more training. And if they can train consistently, they can keep getting better. And so that honestly is one of the bigger things that I've seen. And secondary to that then is just the ability for everyone out there to have the same kind of tools that only the top pros had, 15, 20 years ago. So heart rate, power, GPS, cadence, second by second, all of that is definitely almost ubiquitously available now to everyone, not just that elite top few.
And when it comes to strength training, obviously where I live in northern Vermont, they're pretty far and few between to find a good gym that has, a squat rack or, everything that I kind of need. What about doing at home just body weight strength, whether you get some dumbbells or even just some, water bottle filled with, some pennies or something? I mean, is that still going to be beneficial to kind of that structural robustness you're talking about?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of folks that are new to strength training, just using predominantly body weight exercises, are going to provide enough stress to be able to still improve that structural integrity, keep you injury proof, and have you continuing to get fitter and faster.
Yeah.
So you don't need a whole big gym and all those things to be able to be successfully adding some sort of useful strength training to your routine.
When I assume most people who are joining us today are cyclists or triathletes, how many days a week would you look at implementing some type of indoor training?
Yeah, for most folks, like twice a week is probably enough. If somebody is really doing minimal endurance training and really trying to work on their strength, maybe 3 days a week is okay. But if you're trying to have the overall balance of improving your fitness and on the endurance side, as well as improving or maintaining your strength levels, then twice a week gets you there.
Yeah. And a lot of I've jumped into quite a few of the system home strength workouts. I guess just being an athlete, I always try to go directly to the hardest workout. Rather than starting at beginner level, I'm like, I'm gonna start at expert. I very quickly realized that you can make yourself really sore with just body weight. One of the things that I've learned through yourself, and I guess working with some other folks at Wahoo Sports Science, is the importance of form. When you try and start overextend yourself, you start to lose the correct posture, and you're more focused on the effort rather than the technique and the form that you're using.
Exactly. And that, honestly, the quality of movement, how you're doing your exercise, is far more important than the amount of repetitions you do, or if you're using weights, the amount of mass you move. It's the quality of movement. So definitely think about your form, and it's always better to start easier than to start too hard and have to back off. You can always you can always progress if you start easier, but if you overdo it, you really kind of have to often back off a lot, and you do increase your risk of potentially overdoing it, getting a little overuse, kind of niggle, a little issue that might slow down the rest of your training. So you don't want to do that. You want to do something that's helping you, not something that slows you down or makes you stop doing things.
Yeah, that's kind of been my issue in the past when I have done, found a gym and done, heavy weights. I want to get to like a certain, weight for squatting super quick. And before you know it, I repeatedly make the same mistake where I, squat too much and I can't do anything for 3 or 4 days because I'm so sore, rather than building up slowly.
Definitely. And that's kind of the thing. Like, I started my weight training in November this year, and I've made some progress here by early January, but I know I still have a couple more months to build up to where I would expect kind of my peak of strength that I'd build up to this year. So that'll probably happen in March, and then I'll be in a maintenance mode a little bit more so, but I'll still be doing some heavier stuff once a week, and then doing a lighter day, more body weight throughout the year, as part of my, how I approach things.
Well, when you look at like the difference between, kind of muscular strength and physiological, maybe cardiovascular strength, which comes up quicker? You're talking about a weight program you started in November that you won't really kind of reach your peak until March. Does cardiovascular fitness take the same amount of time, or can that come up a little bit quicker if you start at not at zero?
Yeah, there's effectively different rates of gain of improvement of fitness. And so with our weight training or strength training, the first 6 or 8 weeks are almost all neuromuscular benefits that we see. We're not really changing the capacity of the muscle itself in terms of generating strength. It's more the neural networks, neural connections, and coordination of movement that leads to some early improvements in strength. After that first 6-8 weeks, that's when we start to see the structural change in the muscle fiber. So for endurance, we have different aspects of our kind of lower intensity sustained endurance, and say the ability to use fat as a fuel source. Takes weeks and months of training to see some of those changes occur. The opposite end of that is if we do some VO2 max intervals, we can see a massive increase in stroke volume in just 2 days. after a session like that. And so there's really temporal differences in the rate of gain in these different physiologic and physical systems in training.
Huh. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have a forthcoming podcast with Sam Long, who came into the Wahoo Sports Science Center, I believe around the holidays. I did some physiological testing, and that was one of the things that I guess he learned, and I won't give it all away, but yeah, the importance of utilizing, fat as a fuel over just pure carbohydrate. Is there a way to activate that system during the winter when maybe you're not doing the same volume that you would be doing during the summer?
Yeah, there's a few things. So there's certain aspects at play that are kind of like just your innate physiology. So somebody who is more of a sprinter. 1 lap to go, everyone. Somebody posted up early, I see there. That's funny. The GCN rider who's in front of me. Yes, I saw you. But with your innate physiology, if you're more of a sprinter type, you're probably going to use more carbohydrate than fat at almost any intensity. I fall into that. That's kind of how my body works. I can change it a little bit though. And so having some training that you do, that you really try to keep the intensity in the more low, at most low moderate intensity, means your body is stimulated to use more fat than carbohydrate. You can also, if you do some days that are low intensity where you have a little bit lower intake of overall energy and specifically carbohydrate, you'll also see a little bit of a shift in the fuel you use just because it's what's available. If you deplete your glycogen stores, you just use more fat. Now, with that, if you do too much of it, you're going to be doing all your training at a lower and lower intensity, and you might not get as much benefit from it. So there is a little bit of a, plus minus you have to assess in how low can you go.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's, one of the things, and, there's this huge talk around, the utilization of, fat as a fuel source. Maybe people who are listening, it's not so much, losing weight, it's more optimized, even if you're incredibly skinny, you still have a lot of stored calories on your body to be utilized in an event or a long ride. And it's hard to actually eat sometimes enough during a long event. Your body can only digest and metabolize so many carbohydrates an hour. So if you can utilize fat as a fuel source, theoretically, kind of increase your energy tank for the long course of an event. That's where kind of, I think, a lot of changes have happened recently.
Yep. That we just try to shift and get a little bit of a stimulus there. Though some riders, I know I worked with Rowan Dennis for 9 years, and he's a guy who just burns more carbohydrate than fat at any intensity. And it's probably one of the reasons why he had greater success in like 1 week-long stage races and like time trials, of course. You might deplete glycogen in a long time trial, but it's not as big of a factor as it is in a 3-week Grand Tour. So those riders who have success in the 2nd and 3rd week of a Grand Tour tend to be better in terms of using fat as a fuel. And that's one of the reasons they're just able to recover day in and day out and perform at that higher level as you get later in the race.
Without people coming into
I think I lost you there, Ian, but yeah, without coming into the lab, understanding how much carbohydrate and fat you use, it's a little bit more trial and error, because to honestly know, require actual measurement of how much CO2 you're producing, how much oxygen your body's consuming, to honestly get a true calculation of that.
So I guess that's it. I guess the question then, Sir Neal, is we've all seen those Lumen ads. Figure out whether you're burning fat in the morning. Is that just a gimmick, or is there any real science there? And I hate to put you on the spot for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to speak specifically to a given product, but if I were to measure somebody's metabolism in the morning, I would expect there to be a predominant utilization of fat. no matter who you are, even somebody like, a sprinter, somebody with a lot of fast twitch muscle fiber who has little use of fat when they exercise, they're still going to see at rest a pretty high utilization of fat. During exercise, then the whole situation does change, and it's based on your fitness and your physiology as well as your fueling.
So like most things, you want to measure it.
There.
You want to measure it under load. Yeah, my car can do 100 miles an hour up on jack stands. Yeah.
Exactly. So you do need to have the understanding of during the task what's happening. And so, sorry, Ian, we can't hear you right now. But I'll carry on here, and
I'm back.
if anyone else has. Oh, there you are. Good. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a 5-kilometer long soliloquy here. Get ready.
Should be. I guess my question that I was asking before I dropped was, without someone coming in to do a full round of testing to kind of get their metabolic understanding of, are they a high carbohydrate burner? Are they a low carbohydrate burner? Is there any indication by doing a 40P test of where you may lie if you kind of rank higher in the shorter efforts versus the longer efforts? Do you tend to be a higher carbohydrate burner?
Generally, yes, there would be that trend or tendency. So somebody who is a sprinter or pursuiter, attacker, rider type, so they're going to have higher AC and NM values, relatively speaking, is going to tend to have a little bit less fat utilization at a given intensity. Somebody who's the opposite of that, more of a TTer, climber, what we're going to see there is they're going to be using a little bit higher percentage of fat. And the best way to think of this is at a low intensity, like 50-60% of FTP. So low end endurance, you can do it for several hours. Your average person will burn pretty close to 50-50 carbohydrate fat. Somebody who is on the higher efficiency side with that, so more of that, climber, TTer type, typically will be closer to 60% fat, 40% carbohydrate. And then an attacker, the opposite, might be 60% carbohydrate and 40% fat. Anytime we get up to FTP, everyone out there is using at least 90 to 100% of all the energy is coming from carbohydrate. It doesn't matter whether you're an attacker, a TT, or a sprinter, etc. Once we get to threshold and above, then it's all carbohydrate. It's rocket fuel only then.
And it's kind of an interesting question, kind of a personal question. I feel like a lot of athletes would come in and want to become a more efficient rider, to be able to burn a higher percentage of fat, to move to carbohydrate. What is the way by which you could do the opposite? If you're incredibly efficient, but you kind of struggle with short, hard efforts, how could you become more burning carbohydrate?
Yeah, what would most likely change your capacity there would be working on strength, like neuromuscular work, and anaerobic capacity training, as well as your weight training, just to make sure you have that additional fast twitch muscle mass all the way activated and able to tap into that system, because that's probably the weakness of those folks that have that type of physiology and riding type. So you have to pay attention to the things that maybe are not strengths to get that change. Just like me as a sprinter, I have to work on my sustained efforts, those longer, kind of like just below threshold efforts to get the change in my endurance capacity. Innately, I can do sprint work and get a big bump real quick.
Okay.
But it takes much more time for me to develop the weakness a little bit.
Yeah, and then Neal, I guess we're kind of winding down to coming close to the end of this ride. We should say that this is going to be a weekly ride for at least the next 2 months, potentially further into the spring. I will be leading the next 2 rides. I guess I just have a question I could ask, because next week's guest on the 12th of January will be Heather Jackson, who's a professional triathlete, finished third at Kona before, and is now transitioning to gravel racing and ultra running. I've actually been helping her with a little bit of kind of training and just kind of becoming a more explosive rider. Because in Ironman distance triathlon, she has been incredibly focused on the steady state stuff. So Heather will be joining us next week on the 12th. And on the 19th, I'll be joined by Pete Stetna. All the rides will start at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I believe that's 5 p.m. in the UK for folks who are joining us from abroad. And then Neal, I think you're going to lead some rides.
Yes.
For that one.
Yep. I'm working on lining up my friends. You've got lots of lines to reach out, but I'm going to have some good guests. We'll have good chats, just like Ian is going to be with all the folks he's in contact with. So this is going to be fun. So we're looking forward to doing this over the next few months and getting to know you and hopefully share some information that'll help you train better, be more effective as we enter into this 2023 season.
Yeah, and I guess a way for everyone who's riding today, if there are specific guests that you have interest in trying to get on here to have a discussion with, head over to the RGT Instagram page and comment on the post for this ride, and just let us know which guest you would like to see on the platform for some of these all access rides.
Yeah, that would be definitely great. And if you have any other comments for us, things that you would like to hear about too, or anything about your experience, definitely let us know.
Well, Neal, with just over a kilometer to go, I do have a 100-mile event this weekend down in Mississippi. I'd say I've been fairly consistent in riding or skiing or running over the last couple months, but I have not done much endurance. What would your advice be for myself, just to make sure I can do as well as I can, but also not blow up after 50 miles?
Yeah, I'd say number one, conserve energy where you can. So if you don't have to be on the front pushing the pace, then try to settle in, sit on some wheels a little bit. Number two, you probably will need to eat more than you're used to. Mid-season fitness, you'd have that better fat utilization than you have probably right now. So bring a little more than what you think about, as well as for the hydration, assuming, it might not be hot down there, but it'll probably be warmer than what you're used to. And so you probably haven't been sweating as much. You probably have need for just a little bit more sodium in your drinks. And so make sure, again, not an insane amount more, but just a little bit more than normal. We'll give you some opportunity for better success.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things I probably noticed the most when I'm unfit isn't necessarily how fast I can go or how hard I can go, but how quickly I bonk. And you, like you were saying, when you're not fit and you kind of are used to eating, whatever in training, a bar an hour or a bottle an hour, you do your first long event, you think, oh boy, I really came apart a lot sooner than I would have thought. Just because your body's not ready for it.
Yep, definitely. Things are just a little bit different. So better to have a little extra on board than to run out and be like, oh no, when's the next aid station?
Yeah. And when's your?
I ran into that at Big Sugar last year. I'll be doing Old Man Winter, so just the 50-kilometer version though. So February 5th.
Okay, that's
so a month.
Yeah, coming right up.
A month away, yeah.
And what's the?
So hopefully we don't get snowed out like we did 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was one of the most terrifying bike rides I'd ever done. Even had I been
that was honestly crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the meantime,
all right, gang, final 300.
Oh yeah, we are coming up to the finish.
Yep. In the meantime, doing some skiing and some workouts here, RGT and in system. So we'll keep it rolling and looking forward to seeing everyone maybe next week and the next few weeks. Be sure to sign up for next week's race. You can find them on the RGT calendar under the All Access banner. So
enjoy the communication, fellas.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone for joining today, and we hope to see you next week. And bring your friends, and like I said, line up some questions for next week's guest, who is Heather Jackson, professional triathlete.
Awesome. Very well done, everyone.